Hey everyone, happy Super Bowl Sunday. I'm wearing my Philadelphia football shirt for my beloved Eagles, who, even though they're not in the Super Bowl today, our former coach Andy Reid, who I love, is of course in the Super Bowl with his Kansas City Chiefs. So go Chiefs, go Andy. But we're not really here to talk about sports today. We're here to talk books, and I'm finally getting around to doing my January wrap up for all of you. A little bit late on that, and so let's just get started, shall we? Let me know what you think about this new filming setup. I kind of like it a little bit better standing here talking to you. It feels more personable in some ways. I'll probably still be doing some filming at the desk, but anyway, we'll see how this goes. So, like everything else with this channel, it's all kind of a work in progress, right? So, anyway, okay, so books that I read in January. So, I only really read 4 books in January, and there were also 3 DNFs, which is kind of unusual for me. I think last year I only had like 10 DNFs, and so to have 3 in 1 month is a little ridiculous. But anyway, let's just dive right in. First book that I read, don't have a physical copy of it to show you, but it was Duende, a collection of poems by Tracy K. Smith. Tracy was the 22nd Poet Laureate of the United States from 2017 to 2019, and she is also the former host of the Slowdown, which is a podcast that I absolutely loved. I really loved listening to it. She would give her thoughts, excuse me, on a poem. She'd give her thoughts on a poem and analyze it, and it was a really great podcast. She has, like I said, stepped down from that, but anyway, she's also a Pulitzer Prize winner. She won that in 2012 for her third collection of poetry, Life on Mars. So what I read, Duende was her second collection, and I listened to it on audio because that day I had a really bad migraine and I just needed something soothing and something relaxing, and I love Tracy K. Smith's voice, and so I listened to that. I put that on thinking that that would be something good to listen to. Well, anyway, these poems, they're very well done. They're well written. They are also incredibly dark, and they are taken, like, some of them are taken like right from some disturbing headlines. Like there's one called "I Killed You Because You Didn't Go to School and Had No Future," which is based on the true story of finding a note by the body of a 9-year-old girl, Patricia Hilario, who was found dead in a Rio street in 1989. So that poem, that was a little heavy. There are poems about the lost girls of Uganda, poems about 9/11. So yes, there's some pretty heavy topics. I did want to mention what the title originates from. It comes from Federico Garcia Lorca describes Duende as that dark and elusive force, the creative and elastic power an artist seeks to channel from within. It can lead the artist towards revelation, but must also accept and even serenade the possibility of death. Poems. So that really kind of sums up the poems in Duende. So and I would probably give that collection a solid 3 stars. I would say. Okay, so secondly, second book that I read, which was actually going to be the first book that I read of the year in January. I'm one that I really place a lot of importance on the first book that I read each year, and I like it to be a book that kind of sets the tone for the year. And I was intending to read Wintering, The Power of Rest and Relaxation in Difficult Times by Katherine. I was intending to read that, as the first book that I read this year, and wound up, listening to Duende instead. Ironically, I tend to start off the year with a collection of poetry. So, anyway, so Kismet, maybe meant to be, who knows. Um, Wintering has gotten a lot of attention lately. The the idea behind it is that it takes the concept of wintering, the seasons, the cold, the darkness, and and makes that applicable to the winterings that we all go in, that we all experience ourselves during times of crisis, during emotional upheaval, during traumatic events, certainly like during the pandemic itself. And we've all experienced that, being cut off from the world, feeling not able to cope with our situations, or our whatever. So so she kind of takes that concept and applies it to her own life. This is a memoir, so she brings in stories from her own life to support this idea of wintering. There are some gorgeous, gorgeous phrases that are within this book. I think that there are just, and I don't have them here with me, but the prose is just great. So my issue with the book wasn't necessarily on the writing itself. I think that Katherine May is a fantastic writer, and really did explain the concept of wintering very well. However, I think that there were too many supporting stories that that were included to support that theme, and they didn't quite rise to the occasion. Like, I think that there were some anecdotes and some reflections from her own life that were included that may have been better left out. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with it. And then I know that reviewing memoir is hard because you are essentially reviewing somebody's life, right? But I think that it's really the structure of this memoir that didn't work for me. There would be things that were just sort of dropped, like breadcrumbs. Like, she talked about how she made one reference to that she had autism, and in a time when that wasn't overly discussed, or particularly autism in girls. And I really would have liked to hear more about that, because first of all, I think that it supports the premise of the book, Wintering, but it was also just sort of like just dropped there and not really expounded on. She refers to it again later in the book, but doesn't really expand upon it. And that's her choice as an author. Not faulting her for that, but in the context of this particular book, there were just too many stories that that I did not connect to. There were a lot about some reviews that I've read have said that he talked a lot about her privilege was really showing, that when she has taken trips to Iceland and to see the Northern Lights, and that's not necessarily a effective way of coping with the feelings that that wintering brings, when when you don't have the means to do that. So I think that's probably all that I want to say about that. So yeah, so I would probably I think I gave that like a 2.5, maybe 3 stars or so. Okay, so next book that I read in January is No Time Like the Future, An Optimist Considers Mortality by Michael J. Fox. I really enjoyed this memoir. Michael J. Fox is, as everyone knows, is the former child actor. He He starred in Family Ties as Alex P. Keaton. He was, of course, in Back to the Future, which the title kind of references. He was in Teen Wolf. He's been in a number of movies, and later in his career, he's had roles on Rescue Me, and I want to say The Good Wife. That's not a show that I've watched or am all that familiar with. So, yeah. So anyway, but he's also best known for his battle with Parkinson's disease. He was diagnosed in 1990, went public a few years after that, and has founded the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's, and which has supported research, given billions of dollars towards research and all that. So he so he has written 2 other memoirs. I think actually 3, I believe, none of which I have read. This is the first that I've read. So Michael has he writes about how, like, 30 years into the disease, his reflections on having Parkinson's. This is about, just look at my notes here on this one. So there's a recurring theme throughout this memoir about movement. I talked about this a little bit in one of my previous videos. It opens with he has fallen in their apartment, and he is alone, and his wife is still on Martha's Vineyard. His wife being the actress Tracy K. She is on Martha's Vineyard, so he's alone. He contacts his assistant to help him, and he also he talks about that, and he talks about needing to have spinal surgery for a tumor that is on his spine. So it's about movement in terms of the progression of his Parkinson's. The movement of, obviously, like, Parkinson's is a disorder that, a disease that, affects your movement and your range of ability to, to control movement. But it's also about the movement of time. He writes about his days as an actor and about the second life that he has gotten from the roles that I mentioned previously. He writes about how grateful he is for that. It's about the movement of time, like, through a family. He writes about his relationship with his wife, Tracy K, and their children. Their children are getting older. I think the youngest one just graduated high school when this memoir was come out. And at the time of the writing, this was just published, I believe, like, last year. So at the time of the writing, Michael was 58 years old, and he talks about feeling much older than 58. He writes about his mother-in-laws, who are both his mother and his mother-in-law, rather, who are both in their 90s and very active, and how he wishes, and how the irony of that he feels much older than that they are, much more active than he is. But it's also about, like, the trajectory and the journey of his thinking around Parkinson's. One of the quotes that he mentions in this is about whether he reflects on whether he has been an honest broker with the Parkinson's community, because his message has always been about optimism and in the face of the disease. And as he struggles with that, he wonders whether that is a genuine message at this point. So anyway, fantastic memoir. I would highly recommend this, particularly if you have anybody in your life who has Parkinson's, or if you know anybody. But even just as an understanding of what it is like to experience the disease from somebody who actually has it. And yeah, so I think that was all I wanted to say about that, but I gave this a 3.5, maybe 4 stars. I don't remember exactly. I'll list my ratings below if anyone cares about that. And finally, final book that I read in January was Keep Moving by Maggie Smith. Don't want to really talk too much about this. I will link to my Friday Reads video below because I did kind of go into this a little bit in depth about that. But basically, this is a collection of thoughts and reflections and quotes that originated from Maggie Smith's some Twitter posts that she made in the wake of her divorce. She talked about her divorce, and she was posting on Twitter every day as a way to keep herself moving, to keep going. So the subtitle is Notes on Loss, Creativity, and Change, and it's about how we can adapt, and it's a motivational book for when those life challenges happen. So I had highlighted a few of these, and I talked about some of them on my Friday Reads, but one that I really liked, a few that I really liked is know that the curiosity that drives you to create is the same curiosity that drives you towards the next part of your life. Let it lead you. Keep moving. Then I'll just read another one or two. Except that you may never get to know what it means. Except that there may not be a reason, despite the comfort that reasons provide. Don't look for meaning in whatever collapsed around you. Make meaning by digging yourself out. Keep moving. And I will do another one. Do not turn away joy, even if it arrives at an inconvenient time. Even if you think you should be grieving. Even if you think it's too soon. Joy is always on time. Keep moving. So those were the 4 books that I read in January. Anyway, so thanks so much for watching. If you have read any of these books, I would love to know in the comments. Tell me your thoughts about them. Tell me what you are reading next. Whether you think that this is a better filming setup with me standing here. This might seem to work. We'll see. Anyway, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Happy reading. Thanks so much for watching, and I will talk to you again in my next video real soon. Thanks. Bye.